Hi, so here's a short presentation to provide an outline of what RoboMQ is, its applicability and what benefits it brings to the table. So RoboMQ is a toolkit for building enterprise messaging services. It came about as a result of challenges faced in the investment banking sector. Here, WebSphere MQ is a particularly popular choice of service bus, and so RoboMQ is tailored toward that. It also makes extensive use of Apache Camel for its routing, transformation, and connectivity capabilities. So it provides a bunch of tools for dealing with real-world issues that tend to crop up when you're building straight-through processing services, or indeed any type of enterprise application integration. So let's take a look at some of these. Effective data management. Any interface you're going to build is going to need test data, and getting hold of high quality test data tends to be expensive, so you want to make the most of it. RoboMQ provides tools to manage that data, and the goal here is to minimize the number of times you need to go back to your upstream business user to execute use cases to feed your interface. RoboMQ has some really nice archiving features, so you can group messages coming through the input queue, maybe by use case. Messages can be restored to a queue either individually or as an ordered list, and this makes the retesting process reasonably pain-free. You can copy paste messages or groups of messages between queues and queue managers. Basically treat messages like ordinary files in folders. So it has full text search, supports regular expressions across the entire queue depth. Again, useful for grouping messages into user stories. For example, in a banking services scenario, you might want to search and group by trade ID. So create trade, market operation, cancel trade for a given trade ID might capture a user story. So you've built your service and it's in production. And typically now it would be the responsibility of the run team to keep things ticking along. The kind of things they might be interested in are, obviously, is the service up. What's the input queue depth? The big value here will indicate that at the very least performance is poor, and at worst the service is non-functional. What's the server connection channel usage to the queue manager? Again, a large or increasing value can indicate resource leaks that could in time wipe out all the services hanging off that channel. So RoboMQ has monitor agents that can be configured to provide these kind of metrics. Thresholds can be set for any particular resource, and notifications are issued if they're exceeded. In addition to just issuing warnings, each monitor agent has a built-in database which can be used to record each sample point. And this is kind of useful for demonstrating that you've met your SLA to the business. If you know that over a period of, say, 6 months, your input queue never got more than 10 messages deep, and you know your worst case processing time is maybe a second, then you know that your worst case latency is 10 seconds. Runtime. So this is where the enterprise services container part comes in. Similar to the monitor agents, RoboMQ has execution agents. Each agent would run as a service on some server and will be responsible for managing the life cycle of the runners deployed to that host. So a runner, this is where your interface business logic would reside. Each runner is hosted within its own JVM and wraps an instance of Apache Camel. So Camel is an integration engine. It's the industry standard and it provides connectivity, routing. It's got domain-specific language for expressing business rules. Basically, it implements all of the EAI design patterns. So from the RoboMQ client, once it's made aware of an execution agent, you can view logs of any runner, you can manage remote deployment, you can manage clustering for high availability, you can manage the remote file system for file download, for log file download. It does on-the-fly gzip compression to get pretty high compression ratio to minimize any latency latencycy over the network. You can obtain and extract comprehensive metrics out of the camel runtime. So earlier when we talked about SLAs and the 1 second worst case processing time, this is where you'd view your best, worst and average time per transaction. So this is the bigger picture. In essence, you have your monitor servers providing quality assurance, you have your runtime servers doing the work, and you have one or more RoboMQ workstations controlling and overseeing the enterprise. Service Designer. So RoboMQ ships with an IDE aimed at rapidly developing CAML applications for use within its enterprise services container. Again, being WebSphere MQ focused, it has code generation tools to manage the endpoint generation around that. So if RoboMQ already knows about your queue, maybe for browsing purposes, even if it's SSL, it's capable of auto-generating all the connectivity code for you. It's got a graphical route builder to help visualize the logic, and this is where the deployment's managed from. So this screenshot shows a Spring DSL project. The main work area shows the complete configuration of the various routes and the resources that they depend on. The variable maps at the top right provide support for environmental configuration. So if you need to separately configure your resources depending on, say, whether you're deploying to UAT or production, this is where you'd manage that. Well, that's about it. Thanks for listening.